Okay, so the last sort of sketchy video that I did where I was working directly from a reference, I didn't feel like the video quality was quite what I wanted. So I've been wanting to do another one, and I have an empty house for a little bit tonight, so I thought I would give it another try. This is how I'm set up. I have my reference photo here on my iPad. It has a protective OtterBox waterproof sort of thing on it. So it is going to be safe from any solvents or water or paint that gets sprayed. I have this panel here. This is an ampersand gesso board panel. And it had another painting on it. I just put a coat of acrylic house paint over top of it to act as a layer of gesso, or to act as a coverant, I guess is a better word. And I'm going to begin by working directly into the surface. This is how I paint. I like to work directly. I feel that there's a spontaneity to the marks that I make when I do not have any guiding lines or marks down to steer me. So in this instance, I want the bulk of the painting to be about the dog's blaze and his profile and his eye. I'm not so concerned about the ears, although I have additional photos to place those if I had wanted to. But mostly I am just going to focus on this shape, and I can tell. What you can't see off camera is my palette here. You can already tell that I'm not very happy with this placement here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit it with some water. I'm going to let it move a little bit. I'm going to lift it off because I work with acrylics. This is all water-based, so I can lift it off pretty easily with a scrap piece of newsprint. And I'm going to try again because I don't have much time invested in it. It's not that big of a deal for me to and I'm just going to block in the rest. I'm going to put some guidelines here just so that I can see how the rest of them is going to kind of fall, and I like that better. So let's figure out the placement of his new eyeball. I'm ignoring the marks that are already here. Just trying to stay focused on the marks that I would like or intend to make. There's a lot of water in my paint right now, which is why it appears to be beading up. I think that's originating both from my brush as well as the palette. There's a dog that wants in at the front door. I will be right back. Very good boy. Okay, so I'm back. One of the challenges that I have encountered in videotaping from my home studio is the constant amount of noise and activity that's here. I was kind of forgot when I was at my larger studio that was outside of the house for a while. I conveniently forgot about the amount of noise and other things that go on here. I think honestly that's been my biggest adjustment, is adapting to the interruptions that happen when there's always noise and people coming and going. I tend to prefer to work in a space where I can get inside my own head and not have to answer to anyone or anything, but just respond to the painting and do my work. Okay, I just put some fresh paint on my palette, so let's see how that goes over. Yeah, do you see how that beads up? That's too much water. But I really want to take this down a level in value. One of the things that I do when I'm just what I call blocking in a piece, which is pretty much what this stage is that I'm not worried so much about color as I am about finding that right value and making sure that my composition is interesting to look at. It can be really easy to get caught up in whether or not your likeness is on track, and you kind of forget things like creating visual space for the dog to like breathe into, having an interesting play happening between your positive and your negative shapes. Incorporating a variety of values. So right now I'm building interest up with marks. And what I call non-local color or arbitrary color. And so that you can get a sense of scale. This is an 8x10 painting, and this brush is roughly 3/4 of an inch. So I haven't really done anything too crazy or intense yet. But just wait. This is, can you see this? This is Daniel Smith. It's an acrylic gesso that is gold. Oh, I love this stuff. I know typically gesso goes down as the very first layer, but in this case, I'm just kind of working it into what I already have here. Just like any other paint, gesso can be tinted. And what it's also doing here is that it's picking up some of the color as I lay it down and moving around the canvas a little bit. This will create some really pretty little glints and unexpected surprises at the very end. The majority of it will get covered up. But I love the pop that it brings, and that gesso itself has a mica in it. So when you get in really close, there's these lovely bits of reflected color that just truly delight the eye. Okay, the one thing that's important to me at this stage before I get any further is that I want to double check my drying, because what's going to happen as I continue to move into this painting is that I'm gonna invest in more detail and time in the profile, and because the profile has to be carefully or specifically drawn in order for it to properly represent the dog, I want to make sure that I have it correct. I don't want to have to keep moving it around. It's the area where I have my biggest value step, and I want to make sure that I establish that with confidence at the very beginning. So what I'm going to do right now is spend a little bit of time redrawing or carefully drawing this eye, because the eye is one of the key measurement points relative to the actual profile. So I step my brush size down a little bit in order to better accomplish this. Every time I go back to my palette, I try to change my color up a little bit. One of the benefits of getting the eye done early on, which isn't something that I always do, is that it gives the dog a personality or a presence right from the get-go. So I'm going to hold on to this small brush still. But I'm using a darker color. And I'm going to find these edges. Sometimes you don't have to depict the nose in all of its glory. It's just enough to sketch a little bit of it out. Ultimately, I want the viewer, whoop, that was too dark. I want the viewer to look at the eye in the profile. The nose is just one piece of that. But if I get caught up in putting so much detail down there right now, it's going to demand way more attention. So now I will come in here and see if I can't build this. Now this reads like it's pure white, but it is not. This has a good amount of like a creamy, greenish, orange gray, a gray lead towards green orange. There's actually sort of again, every time I go back, I'm changing. I don't think you can see it in the video, but there are some subtle things going on here. One of the toughest or most challenging things, I think, for some people is when they see a white object in a painting, their first inclination is to squeeze out white paint and paint it as pure and as clean as the paint that comes from the tube. If you really want a painting to feel alive and you really want those whites to be believable, the trick is to tint them with a little bit of color. Our brain will look at them in the context of the painting and it will say, that's lightest light. And it will automatically tell us, or it will tell us without needing much guidance, that because that is the lightest light, it is white. really battling with the water today. I guess that means it's time for me to clear out my palette and start with a fresh batch of paint because I'm spraying too much to keep it workable. I use a Masterson Say Wet palette system. That allows me to work my paints very similarly to how a oil painter might, where I can lay out lots of different colors all at once. I actually lay out all of my colors at the very beginning of every paint session. I lay out every single one of my colors, just a thumbful of them. But I do that because that way they're there for me to choose from at a later point. And I use a good variety of them as I'm mixing. Even though I'm mixing areas of, even though this dog is predominantly black and white, I am using all sorts of purples and other things, excuse me, in his painting. If I were to only lay out the colors that I thought I would need, then every time I make a discovery that I need something else, my painting flow is interrupted. Okay, now I'm going to move to a bigger brush because it's time for me to address this negative space. I put that gold down in there and I really like it, but I need to soften it and I need to take it into a darker value in order to properly set off that profile. So I'm going to start with a larger brush and I'm just going to cut in pretty close. And again, every time I go back, I'm going to change it a little bit. Now, once I cut this in here, we'll really get a sense of whether or not that profile is right. Pretty close. I'm going to bring this forward on my easel up here so that I can get a nice mark across the bottom. And then I push too hard and it pops right back. So let's see what we can do here. Because the object is a product of its environment and my background here is kind of purpley, I want to introduce some of that into the blue or the black of his body. Because that's the other thing with darker fur, we know that that reflects the colors that are around it too, so. Go in here and drop this down a little bit more. This background is a bit too brushy for my liking. So I'm going to go back in and I'm going to make some more intentional marks. And I may not have the right brush actually chosen to do that. I think this brush itself is part of the problem, because it's pretty bristly too. See that line? I'm going to swap it out for a softer brush so that I can get some more intentional marks. I really like the sort of blocky marks that happen with a nice softer brush. It allows me to make more confident brush marks, and I feel like that's half the battle when you're painting a portrait, is that you gotta do it with confidence so that it comes across as an assertive likeness. That's probably too light, but now in the photo, this is his collar here, and his white bib actually goes all the way down. If I were to honor that, and I kind of have already with the way his fur is chunked, I would have a little snippet of white here at the edge, and that would be really distracting. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pretend that his collar isn't there, but I'm going to hint at the fact that the bib keeps going. And I need to get this little mouthpiece drawn properly. There we go. Edge is just a little bit too harsh. So as far as a sketch goes, I would say that this one is pretty darn successful. I'm going to grab a smaller brush and brighten up that catch light in his eye. Not going to use pure white for it, but I do want it to be as bright as his eye itself. But yeah, so I've been working on this for about a half hour, and you can see how far I got along in his likeness. If this were a portrait that I were to continue to work on, I would refine this with more layers of marks. I would now go back in and put arbitrary bits of color around, and I would smooth out the way I have defined his rough. But as far as a sketch goes, this is a really lovely little sketch, and I'm very, very pleased with it. It isn't perfect. I could tell that the mouth is a little bit off, but it definitely gives a sense of the dog and his presence, and I've achieved that profile that I was looking for. So let me know what questions you might have. I hope you enjoyed watching me paint this, and I'm glad I had the opportunity to do this. Hopefully this video is a little bit more, a little bit better quality than the one I did earlier of the Irish setter. So thanks for watching.